So how are we going to become a better player in 2026? I'm just off the phone to a player who has had the 2025 was his best season he's ever had, a very accomplished player. And again, like we're going through this process of how can we step up from that? He's won numerous titles, and it's a tricky thing. But obviously, for yourselves, it's you might be a pool professional, you might be an amateur pool player at league level. You could be a snooker player. I don't know, but fear not, because there's a process in order to learn how to do this. If you're not already on Q Sport Hub, very much you need to be doing that, because this will profoundly. This is exactly the sort of thing you're going to kind of like learn there. Of course, Q Sport Hub's fully, it's hydration, food content, and sleeping, and mindset, and all these absolutely exceptional, yummy things that are going to profoundly help your game. But really, it's what I'm going to speak about here for free is about process, and this will really help you, understand how to become a better player in the following year. But obviously, we're going to, this is just skimming the surface of that, no, really, because obviously we're going to much greater detail in the hub. The overriding thing is, if you do the same thing, you'll get the same result, right? Einstein that's not my saying or catchphrase. That is from Albert Einstein. He termed it as the definition of insanity is doing the same thing, expecting a different result. And really, this is exactly what I find happens in Q Sports season on season on season with players. They're going into the following season hoping that they're going to do really well. Sorry, excuse me, I think. Sorry. As ever, Q Sport Hub, we embrace some failure, some issues like that. So, excuse me. But yeah, it's really as you've learned on the hub, it's like our little foibles, our little mistakes, there's our juicy stuff. I never click stop and record. I just keep on going. We are ad-libbing here, and this is exactly what I want you guys to be chasing as well, not perfection on the table. But really, it's so important to understand that it's all about process, and this is how we get better. By doing this, we can profoundly impact our games by looking at how to become better. It's like we're not going into tournaments or the following season into 2026 and hoping to play better. No. That's not going to serve you well. That's not going to serve you well. And it's only going to lead to, and this is why the games end up being so frustrating. Elite sport is where my background is from, right? And elite sport, I mean, like way beyond the levels of Q Sports, right? We're into what happens with in Premiership football, like I said, top line motor racing, Le Mans, Formula One, etc. This is where the standards are set. And then below that, obviously, we've got tour golf, tennis, etc. These are very well developed sports with processes in place for improvement. And this is exactly what I'm kind of illustrating to you here. It's so vital to understand that what's happening at that level is they're never going to, like we're on about year on year, 25-26. An English Premiership football team is not going into the next weekend's game with the same process year, match on match, never mind year on year. They're constantly evolving what they're doing in order to learn, in order to see what works. I'm going to trial and error this process and see what works. And it's really about, I'd encourage a player to look at the success that other players are having. Like I do a segment on the hub, that's getting really soon, called Masterclass, and part of like I get various players to talk about their game and how they've improved and how they've gotten to the success they've got, like Skelly Fisher, etc. That we work with, and it's like my version of that is like I'm encouraging players to look at elite sports people. YouTube is full of documentaries about elite sports people and the success they've had in their career, or there might be an interview with a world-class player in any sport, doesn't matter. There's even learning to be out from businessmen, to be honest, but let's just keep it with sports people. And just watching those videos and hearing from these world-class players that have won all these things, a Djokovic or Johnny Wilkinson, or what's the word called, Steve Redgrave, Chris Hoy, cyclist. It's like watching these players and performers and Olympians like discuss how they've applied themselves. Is that absolutely profound? That'll have a profound impact on your pool game or your snooker game. Absolutely, it will. Like understanding that process of like looking at what you've done, write down how much time you've been practicing. Like if you're on the hub already, then you should be like looking at like what you're hydrating, what your food intake is like, what your mindset's been like. Look at everything that you're doing, write it all down, and then write down the plan for 2026 is this. I'm going to make improvements in all these areas. I'm going to start losing weight. I'm going to, head into the swimming pool. I'm going to take up yoga. I'm going to practice more. I'm going to hydrate better. I'm going to join Q Sport Hub. I'm going to study. I'm going to get a mentor. Like if you're a weak player, or you're a 50 beat player in snooker, get yourself a mentor, like somebody who 100+ breaker to teach you some aspects of the game, in terms of shot choice, how to play safeties, etc., etc. It's really, really profound. Absolutely, look at get some technical lessons. Absolutely, look at working on yourself in terms of like developing who you are as a person as you learn on the hub. Look at your life off the table, like profoundly change things that you're doing, and you'll see a profound impact on your game off the back of that. You can't not. And this is where it's like it's so difficult for a Formula One team, an English Premiership football team, to find gains and improvements. It's so difficult to do that. But in Q Sports, it's so easy because of the lack of knowledge and discipline and application that players are putting into like how they are. Like the sport is got a long way to catch up on, tour tennis or golf. It's like a typical top line tour tennis player or golfer will have 6 or 7 members of staff. I've worked with footballers who are nowhere near like World Cup standard and playing for their chosen team, country. It's like they're a few leagues down from the top, and yet I can think of one player goalkeeper, and I was one of 4 members of staff that player currently employed of his own back, on top of all the staff and the help that he's got at the club. This is the norm in elite sport. And if you're trying to, especially if you're a very well developed player and verging on a pro, part of the difficulty you're going to have is if you're trying to make a step on, inevitably I find most players are trying to do that by themselves, and it's way, way, way too difficult. This is why elite sports people are surrounded by people to help them, to make them accountable, to train them in certain areas, because it's way, way, way too difficult to be world class by yourself. Ask any if you know a multi-millionaire, self-made multi-millionaire, ask them, they'll tell you exactly the same. They surround themselves with experts in various different fields. This is the process of improvement. And so with that in mind, like you'll profoundly impact your game just by getting yourself a mentor down the club. Like doing that, looking after yourself a bit better away from the table, eating a bit healthier, dropping the beer, drink more of this instead. Practice a bit more. Sport is millions of little things done really well, right? And if you're a league level player in pool or snooker, and you do half a dozen things that will make your game better, dropping the beer, taking this, practicing a couple of hours more a week, getting yourself a mentor, put a few things into place like that, getting on Q Sport Hub, applying those things. Like you do that, your game will absolutely skyrocket at that level. Absolutely skyrocket, for sure. But and then it, further up the level where we've got, say, supremely skilled amateur players who are just on the verge of turning pro, even be it pool or snooker. It's exactly what I put in place. Of all the ones that work with one-to-one, I've got a pro mentor. They're learning off of somebody who's done it already. So so like a young snooker player who is amateur, but like he's a 140 break plus player, and he's at the upper echelons of Q School and Q Tour, and they will have two or three pro players who have got their arm around them and they're helping them. That'd be absolutely the norm, and it's something I would put in place. I'm not enough. I'm not the whole answer to a player at that level. Absolutely not. I'm just part of the equation. He's a mechanical coach. He's somebody to help him, on physical fitness side of things. A dietitian, etc. Myself. It's like my job is much more of a kind of almost a managerial one, and kind of like putting all those things in place, because that's more my side of things, i.e., an overall performance, a kind of career guidance to that player. And then similarly, like you might have, say, like a pro world snooker player who's say 60th in the world. Again, I'd encourage him to have a mentor who is a multiple world champion. That's what you'd be wanting. And also as a playing partner in practice, in order, and this is very key at all levels for you, in order to become a better player, you need to play a better opponent. So it's really, really key that, and in order for you to develop your game, playing practice partners being of a much higher level, that's brilliant, right? So, like my leading women players, even like Kelly Fisher, I'd be saying, no, you want to be practicing with the leading men, which is, constantly what she's been doing already. But it's there obviously becomes a problem for that at the upper echelons, because like a Judd Trump or Mark Selby or something, how do they take that box in order to become a better player? Need to play a better opponent, kind of struggling, right? And the same in the pool world, for the likes of a Jordan Shepherd or Stephen Ellis, it's very difficult. They're off playing hayball, so obviously my suggestion to them would be like Benji and the top Chinese ones. We need to try and be getting games for them if possible in order to tick that box. But it's just understand sport is hundreds of little things done really well. And as I say, like in Q Sport Hub, there's 10 hours of content of me talking exactly like this, and we're going into this much greater detail. For those of you who've been on the Hub before, make sure you come back, because we've got a big update coming in early January, and new content, which is going to be really great. So hopefully that's really helped out, because obviously it's a bit of free content on our YouTube channel, and you've got to do all the like and subscribe and comment. Please do all that. And And sharing it on your social media, sharing this video on your social media if you're watching this now, that'd be great. That'd be much appreciated. So, hope this helps. Hope you're all well. Keep in touch. Take care.